What is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Do It With Dinkelberg here, and we're back at again in my shop with what you've all been waiting for, the 73 Camaro. This is going to be the focus of the channel for the next couple of months. Now, things are going to be a little bit different with the build. I'm going to go over that real quick. You and I both know this build has been a long time coming. This was a car that I was going to LS swap and do a mild resto mod on. As we dug deeper and deeper into the car, we found a lot more problems. You know, I was basically, I don't want to say scammed, but it is what it is. And we're going to truck on like such. I'm going to be doing a lot of learning on this thing, a lot of new stuff that I haven't done, a lot of fabrication and a lot of body work and metal work that I've never even attempted to tackle once in my life. So my goal right now is to get this thing up and running and drivable by summertime.
Any means necessary.
I'm not saying it's got to be perfect. I just want to be able to drive it from point A to point B come summer. Maybe it'll be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Fucking wicked and cool, right? I don't want to say rat roddy, but somewhere between rat rod and resto mod, you know, somewhere in between. And then once it's up and ready and driving and hooning and stuff like that, we can figure out the small details then. But let's do a quick overview on what needs to get done, and we'll move into today's video. Where we left off last time was replacing this upper cowl here. I haven't welded it in place because I'm still thinking about running a tube chassis through this firewall here. There's a huge gap, as you can see, that I think would be a perfect spot to run a tube chassis, not only through here, but into here, and then also it can attach to the subframe with some core motor supports. So I think I still want access to this area, so I'm not gonna work on welding this all up yet. And I'm still missing a crucial tool for this. I need a hydraulic tube bender. I have a manual one, but I told myself I'm absolutely not gonna try to weld a roll cage or build a roll cage without a hydraulic tube bender. So I'm still working on trying to get that. It's been a barrier of the channel for probably 3 or 4 years now, but it's something that I need, and I need to figure it out. So I'm working on that. But this is the area that I really wanna focus on first. Again, you saw in the last video, this is all just completely destroyed. This whole A-pillar is ruined. This is going to be the area that I just kind of start working with. I don't know what else to do here other than to just start cutting it apart, welding in new pieces and replacing this. This has got to be fixed. This has got to be corrected. It is very bad condition here. I mean, if you just look, you can tell how absolutely jagged it is. And this is what's been on my mind a lot, is just how I'm going to do this. So I really think that the best way I can tackle this is going to be just to cut the pieces of metal that I need and weld it and shape it as best I can into place. And I think as long as the windshield still mounts and seats, it doesn't really matter how perfect these areas are. As long as they're strong and robust, I think it's good to go. But before we get to work, I gotta step away for a second and show you this new tool I picked up. Now, this is sponsored, but trust me, this thing will blow your mind. This is the DXZtoz AGC 500L. I think I'm saying that right. It's an articulating boroscope camera, and it's an incredibly useful tool. Seriously, having one of these things would have saved me so many headaches with more than a few projects. It's absolutely perfect for getting a crisp and clear angle of hard to see or reach places without having to disassemble major components, like inspecting the inside of a cylinder for damage, or checking the valves in my Magna. Look how much carbon buildup we have. And I'm not even sure what's going on with this one. I'm pretty sure this is one of the pistons that isn't been firing. Or you can check behind a quarter panel for rust. Had I had this when I bought the Camaro, it would have saved me a ton of hassle. There were a lot of issues that were hidden and not in plain sight, and I certainly couldn't have seen it without disassembling the car. So if I'd had one of these, I never would have bought this Camaro. And this little guy is loaded with all kinds of useful tech. First of all, your head tip articulates in either direction by turning this knob, so you can get into tight places or navigate around corners. And you get 2 wide-angle cameras, a forward-facing camera and an upward-facing camera. And you can toggle between the 2 or even split screen them, which is super useful. And of course, you get this really cool light that has multiple brightness settings for seeing in dark, cramped areas. But for me, the kicker is the camera quality. Not only is it super crisp 1080p, but you can take photos and even record video so you can play it back on your computer or your phone. Link for it's in the description of the video. I bet money if you pick one of these things up, you'd be super happy with it. Now we can get to work. All right, I'm just gonna start out by cleaning this area up and getting it prepped, maybe cut some of the metal out, and then that way I can take some paper and recreate the pieces that I need, cut it out with the machine, and then tack them in place. After hitting the corner with the wire wheel, I start making plans to recreate the top of the firewall. Using good old-fashioned CAD, I create a template for the first piece and begin to cut into the car.
Now, an angle grinder is absolutely a bit too big for this kind of work, but it's really what I had. And honestly, I'm pretty dang good with one now. It's a tool I've used for a very long time. After some prying and grinding, I cut a dimensionally accurate piece with my table. I also take some body tools to smooth out the damage I did from removing the surface layer. Since I'm satisfied with the fitment of the first piece, I begin cutting the second section. This was a complicated cut for the larger angle grinder, but I did my best to make it work. Again, I recreate the piece I cut out in cardboard and translate that to my table in a flat piece. I have to take this piece of metal and shape it to fit into this position. This is where my forging experience has come into play a little bit. I'm going to use my vise and some body hammers to manipulate the metal into the correct shape. I did forget to record the first piece, but I filmed the others, so we'll break it down when I get to it. Now, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but honk fucking honk, brother. Look at that fitment. Look at those lines. We said, wow, what a good body line. But before I can weld these pieces in place, I need to clean the welding surface up. There's a ton of body filler and crud in the welding spots. So I torch the areas that I can't just use a brush to get out. There really isn't a better way to do this. Just don't get it too hot and definitely wear a respirator when doing this. This is some nasty shit. I'm also going to switch up my weld wire for this. Recently, I ran an 035 wire to build my steel bumper, but since this is sheet metal, it's way thinner. I'm dropping down to an 030. I probably should go smaller, but this is really just what I happen to have on hand, so we're going to make it work. With everything cleaned up, I gap my pieces and tack them in place. Then I finish the welds. After the welding's all done, I grind everything smooth, and the results are way better than I could have anticipated.
All right, so the repair that I did down here, very happy with it. I'm stoked on the way that it looks. I did a lot better of a job than I thought I was going to. So I'm very happy with that. That's a great start. Next, I'm gonna move my way up the A-pillar. The A-pillar has a lot of damage here on both sides. I mean, it starts from all the way up here and goes all the way down here, which probably isn't that big of a deal, but these things are very multi-layered, right? Not just one square piece of steel. It's several pieces of steel stamped and folded on each other, then tacked welded together. This whole section right down here needs to be replaced, but I can see where this section gets so damaged that it just kind of falls apart, and then that's where they did a ghetto job of riveting it back into place. This repair that they did is awful. There's holes up here, which means that the rain has been eating through here, the water, whatever, has been eating through here and probably traveled all the way down these rails, which is why it's so rotten down here. So I'm just gonna start sectioning off areas of this to expose the damage and see where we're at. I think probably these pieces would continue all the way down. So you have one piece that's on the bottom layer, and then you have this L-shaped piece that goes all the way down, that's folded. I'm gonna do my best to recreate it and make it stronger than what it is. I mean, you see how rough these are all eaten out, right? So I think that there's almost zero chance of me being able to do any worse than what this is. That's fingers crossed. Another big thing is these pieces right here. I don't know how legible this is gonna be on camera, but this little nipple right here that you can see, it's barely sticking out. These are all over the frame of the windscreen here. And these are used to hold on the trim. There's a piece of chrome trim that goes all the way around. Now, obviously that's going to be cut off with the cut wheel here in a second, because I have to cut this section out. There's no way around it, which means it'll be missing a piece of trim retainer here. They have little clips that go on these things, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this is gonna be more of a figure it out later kind of deal. I'm gonna have to remove that. I don't think there's any way around it, because the damage certainly looks like it goes well behind that. But like I said, I'm gonna just start sectioning chunks off, figure out how bad the damage is, and then start recreating the pieces, tack them in place, welding and grinding. It's gonna be a lot of that.
So I'm going to take the angle grinder here and remove the top layer. Once it's removed, we're able to take a peek at the damage. It is better than I expected in some places, but it's also worse than others. The skin along the crease of the body line is extremely thin in some areas from the previous repair, and I know this particular spot is going to be hard for me to fix without blowing through the metal with the welder. But after a closer look, it seems the rot only goes up about midway through this bottom layer of the A-pillar. So I'm simply going to cut this section out and try to make a repair patch. This is, however, going to be tricky because not only is there a corner I will have to replicate, but there's also a concave bow to it that I will have to get right so the windshield still fits properly. Now, after hacking this section out, I come across something that I did not expect. The bottom of this A-pillar is filled with some type of gunk. A black, sticky, gooey mess. I can only assume that this is some kind of uncured urethane filler that someone just gunked into the crevices. Giggity. Regardless, we can't have this in here when we go to weld it. Not only will it affect the quality and the cleanliness of the weld, it might catch fire or emit some really toxic fumes, so we gotta clean that out. Now, after I scraped out what I could, I donned on my gas mask, turned on a vent fan, and began burning out the rest.
All right, this piece I just cut out with the machine. Obviously, I'm gonna bend it to fill in that piece. It's hard to tell on this camera, but I've included with the design 2 little notches on either side. One here, and then the other one right about here. And that's gonna give me a solid line to fold on. So I'm gonna put it in the vise, fold it the way I need it to, and then hopefully it'll fit. Obviously, it will have to be beat and shaped into place to make that curve. So let's do it.
All right, here we go for all the marbles this time. I do need to invest into a good sheet metal brake or build a standing one, but until then, I'm beating metal in a vise.
Dude, this is awesome. We are getting very close with just minimal work here. This is so cool. Stick with me here. This part right here is shaped like this. I need it to be shaped like this, all right? It's the difference between a girl arching her back and a girl arching her back. You know what I mean? But that piece needs to have more of a bow. Bro, are you kidding me? Look at that fitment, dude. Look at it. Look how good the fitment is. I'm about to tack this bitch in place. Oh, hell yeah.
And again, not to toot my own horn, but I'm incredibly happy with how well this piece came out. Reminder, this is my first time ever doing anything like this. And see, the truth is, learning how to do metalworking like this is something that I've been putting off for years. It's something that I was terrified that I would be terrible at, which is stupid. Like, why would you be afraid to try something new just because you're afraid of being bad at it? That's the whole point of learning, forehead. Anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I just had to grow a set of balls and say, fuck it, time to man up. It ain't shit, but just a little bit of work. And look, I'm not saying I'm amazing or the best or even if this is the best or right way to do this repair. I'm just saying that I did better than I ever even imagined I could have done, and all it took was a little bit of work. And I'm telling myself, my future self, watch this video when you're nervous about the next big task. You've got this. Look at what you did, dumbass. Now go get to work. And speaking of getting to work, it's time to make our next piece of the puzzle. We're now working on the body. Everything we've done so far will be covered up by other panels, so I was just practicing on the below levels so I could perfect it up top. It's time to do my cardboard thing again. This method has always done me good, but it can be a little inaccurate sometimes because it's so thick. So I think in the future I'm going to be switching up to poster board for these projects. Just seems like it might be a better way at getting the dimensions accurately. If I'm being real, this is the biggest challenge yet. This piece for me was very complex. Not only do we have two separate bends, we also have a concave slope that needs to mirror the piece it's laying on. It took me about 2 days to make this piece. I don't really mean like 2 solid days of hammering, but a few hours each day to get it right. Realistically, I have maybe 5 to 6 hours in just making this piece alone. But of course, over time, I will get better and faster. Find better techniques and tools to get the shapes I need, but until then, I'm gonna flex. Because look at this fitment. Just look at it. I mean, damn. Talk about a first try. Now, when it's time to weld it, I don't want to just weld the pieces sanded and raw against each other. Over time, they will rust and we'll be back to square one. So we're going to use some zinc-based weld-through primer so we don't get rust, but also we get a good weld. Now, normally you can't weld on a prepped or primed surface, but with zinc-based primers, you can. Now, let me warn you guys, this next part was a nightmare. Firstly, there was so much gunk behind the A-pillar that I didn't notice. I was getting some major porosity in the first few spots. The metal was also extremely thin in a few areas from another repair that I didn't spot. That takes place about midway through the A-pillar. It looks like someone has cut off the A-pillar and then re-welded it back in place. The only problem is that the repair is also full of porosity, and it was getting messy fast. So here's what I did. Firstly, I exposed the old repair to see what I was working with. I also ground down the porosity in my welds and torched the back of the A-pillar and cleaned it out the best I could. Then I built off my old welds by adding some more material in the areas that were too thin to weld directly to. My goal was to add more metal than I needed so I could almost shape it like clay. And after I was happy with everything being ground smooth and sanded, it was time to fix that repair that the previous owner had done. I ground down the welded area with a die grinder, then welded it shut. This would probably be better if I knew how to TIG, but trigger gun is easy. Then I smoothed it out with the angle grinder and a couple of other tools. I also block sanded the high spots by hand and got everything pretty much smooth and level, and I'll be honest, I am very happy with the outcome. I just feel really good about this repair. But let me know what you think I did in the comments. How can I improve? What kind of tools would have made this easier? Because I am happy with this repair, but we're not out of the woods yet. There are a lot of areas along the windshield that still need to be repaired, but realistically, these are the only areas left that need this kind of repair. Once we're done with those, we can start putting this car back together.
Alright, now I know, like I said in the beginning of the video, it doesn't really seem like we've made that much progress. As a matter of fact, we haven't really moved outside of our like 1.5 foot area range in this entire video. But I promise you that's the most progress that we've made on this car so far. And it's not even finished. Like there's still a little bit of work for me to do that I will do on camera, but I want to remind everybody I'm doing this while also doing orders and getting ready to move shops, as well as that I'm new to this kind of work. I've never done this kind of work before too. So it's taken me a while to learn how to do this stuff. There's a lot of like techniques that I'm having to just kind of figure out. But even with all of that being said, I am so like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I am so impressed with myself in the way that I've able to figure that out. Like there's a lot of places that I kind of like pulled information from, some of it being YouTube, some of it being when I visited Detroit Speed. Obviously they've got really talented guys working for them, some body guys too. So I took a little bit of what they showed me and taught me while I was there in that brief moment and tried to replicate it, plus pulling videos off of YouTube and talking to some of my bodywork friends. Overall, I feel like that's good considering I made that piece from scratch. And I feel tons more better. I feel a lot better about the way this is held together now than how it was before. But obviously moving forward, we have a lot more work. And I'm getting better as I go, so I don't expect the next side to take as much time, but the other side is also worse off than this side, to the point where I might even consider just buying a reproduction A-pillar if I can find it. We'll see. But here's the fantastic news, guys. The structure doesn't matter that much here anymore because I've been able to lock down a tool that I have been searching for years, a hydraulic tube bender. Which means that this car is gonna get a tubular front end kind of, as well as like my own custom tube chassis. So when that gets here, you guys are gonna see me learn a lot. It's insane actually how much I've had to learn how to do just for this one little piece. So I hope you guys don't look at that and think, wow, Dan didn't accomplish nothing today. That's hard work. I'm not gonna bullshit you, dude. I made that entire piece by hand. Not to suck my own dick or anything, but gobble gobble. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously that is, it is a good fair amount of work, but we have room to improve, so we're gonna keep on trucking. I recognize now how easy it would be to just walk away from this thing, but I think about it like this. Had somebody else had bought this car, gotten into an accident, or had somebody hit them, they might have died. Because of how rough, how bad of shape this whole front end, this crumple zone, there's no crumple zones in the 70s, but where the impact would crumple the car, there's nothing supporting it on the other side. So I think about it as like, not only did I take an unsafe car off the road, I'm not gonna let it go to the junkyard. No matter how long it takes me, I'm gonna stick through it. If I'm gonna do Lingenfelter Customs, I'm gonna have to figure out how to do shit like this. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you gotta take the first step sometimes. And thank you guys for the love and patience and support on this, and I promise you, and my goal is to have this thing drivable by the end of summer. That's the goal. It's a lot of work to do. We have a lot of pieces we gotta make. We got a lot of fabricating we gotta do, but I think once we get done with that, the rest will kind of just come. So I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Why did I bend over like that for that outro? That was fucking stupid. Just pretend I didn't do that, guys. Just like close your eyes and think that I just didn't do that for the outro. And you're like, oh wow, Dan, you're so good. Yeah, I know it. I know it.